Good afternoon, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to today's engaging fireside chat with Junior Ogunyemi, whose achievements and insights as a multi-award winning entrepreneur, author, and keynote speaker are truly inspiring and remarkable. And so, in today's discussion, we'll be delving into a pivotal role that universities play in fostering entrepreneurship among students. This is a topic that's extremely significant in shaping the future landscape of innovative businesses and entrepreneurial careers for students. And so, ideally, we'd like to explore the strategies in which educational institutions can cultivate a better environment to empower upcoming generation of innovators and business leaders. But before I go ahead with our discussion for today, I would like to invite Junior to share a little bit more about his background and the impactful work that he has been engaged in recently.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, absolute pleasure to be with you here on this podcast. This is exciting. I know we've worked together in the past, but it's always good in this new capacity and such a very relevant topic as well. So my background is I've always been an entrepreneur, probably since the age of about 16. So I got straight into business quite young and had a lot of successes, had a lot of failures, but I started to grow my entrepreneurial muscles, as it were. And that led to me ended up writing a book called How to Be a Student Entrepreneur, which was basically teaching other young people all about sort of the pros and the cons of setting up a business young. And that took my career as a speaker into the next level where I started to travel around for well over a decade, speaking at various colleges, unis, business events, and just sort of sharing principles. And it clearly resonated with a lot of people because it started to pick up, create a bit of a movement. And I was still running my own businesses on the side, still investing in other businesses. Most of my business, one of my businesses that I started back at 16, which was a football coaching academy back then. That's now been running for almost 17 years now. So it's grown, won multiple awards. I've set up other businesses, sold businesses, built businesses, and invested in other businesses as well. So now I invest in various businesses and other assets. But yeah, it's all around sort of teaching other young people how to go about doing it in a strategic way. But not just young people now, because I don't really consider myself to be young, but people who are in a position where maybe I'm just a student or I'm at university and I don't really see the point of the traditional educational route. And the reason I say it's quite relevant is because the messages I was sharing probably 10, 15 years ago was kind of predicting the world we're in now. And now we're sort of here where a lot more jobs are becoming obsolete and people are really realizing that, oh my goodness, I don't have any entrepreneurial skills to stand on now. So that's why it's becoming more and more relevant. And where before I was advising universities to adapt their curriculum and change, now universities are dragging me in to say, we need to quickly adapt and change. Can you help us? So it's it's good times, it's interesting times. For some people, it's scary times, but hopefully, some stuff that we share on this podcast can help navigate the the journey ahead for a lot of people.
Thank you very much, Junior. I think that is a very interesting journey you've had, and it's great that you're also helping universities to, also help their students to, continue on that entrepreneurial journey and just find a way to, you know, uh, find that journey in their career path. So I think that's a great sort of journey that you have started. So looking back at your student days itself, you studied economics as one of your courses, right? Would you say that this has played a role in shaping your path towards entrepreneurship itself?
Yeah, I think everything I've done has sort of shaped my path. Um,
Mm.
I mean, economics is really the study of how people make decisions, especially around money and how it influences people. So there's lots of overlap there and relevance to business. Um, I mean, I initially didn't when I was, you're young, you're at college, you don't exactly know what you're going to do with your life. Everyone thinks that you should do, so you have to pick this course that's going to set you off for the rest of your life. And everybody I knew who was making big money at the time worked in the city, so and they all had an economics degree. So I thought, all right, let's get an economics degree. You can can it be safe? And then probably like halfway through that course, I realized that this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. It's not my calling, it's not my passion. But I was running my businesses outside of that. And almost by the time I graduated, I'd probably made enough money to pay off all my tuition fees. I'd probably been the only person in my cohort who had a business that they could literally just walk straight into as opposed to go and apply for another job. So I sort of already knew what I was going to do, and it wasn't going to be like an investment banker. But I followed through with the degree because I realized that if I can apply some of the principles that I'm learning, basic demand and supply, which is very relevant in business today. And I still teach some of the stuff that I learned from my economics degree to business owners. So there is definitely a lot of overlap. But I think the big thing I took from the whole uni experience was, things like meeting deadlines, working on projects, working um, to to uh, to set goals. Um, that's what I took into the business world with me, and that's what kind of made me the type of entrepreneur I am. And everyone says I'm quite frugal. It's probably because of my economics degree as well. So I'm quite savvy with money now.
That's great. You know what? I've heard of many students currently in universities that are still trying to find a way or to decide what course they're actually interested in. And sometimes, even with the courses that they studied after graduation, they still find it difficult to transfer those, the theory or the skills that we've learned in school into the real world. So it's also, it's great to know what course you're looking to do in future. But then again, sometimes this changes, right?
Yeah.
I remember studying business in school, and then when I started uni, I started studying marketing itself. So sometimes, as you develop, you begin to know what you're most interested in and how that aligns with your career. So
Mhm.
thanks for sharing that. So can you share a significant challenge or setback you faced in your entrepreneurial journey and how you have been able to overcome that? And, also share what sort of lessons you think aspiring entrepreneurs can also learn from your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because like right now, in my current role, I'm also the enterprise advisor at Greenwich University. So I sort of sit in the panel to decide who gets funding, and I advise a lot of the student businesses. And so I've seen a lot of the challenges that the current students are facing, and I've also seen the challenges that I faced in my time. And I think the big similarity in terms of the biggest challenges and struggles is doing it alone. I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make. And it's an easy mistake to make because as an entrepreneur, you kind of have to have this level of self-confidence that you can probably do it alone. I also tell people that that's probably my most toxic trait. I think I could just do everything on my by myself. So it's if I'm on a plane and there's no pilot, I'll say, right, I'll fly the plane. It's just in your nature to say we'll figure it out. But you also have to remember that you are a limited resource, and as much as you might have certain skills here, you don't have all the skills, and you shouldn't have all the skills either. Um, and you also got a limited amount of time, and you've also got a limited amount of energy. And you are also probably the engine of the business. So if you burn out and you collapse, then the whole business collapse. So that hasn't changed. And that's although we've got things like tools like AI and all these things and social media that makes life easier, they also do create their own problems. But the consistent thing is that you shouldn't have to do it alone, and you shouldn't expect to do it alone. So, sometimes we also celebrate this, oh, I'm a solo entrepreneur, this empowerment movement, but you're almost shooting yourself in the foot because you when you have a team, you can go further, you can be held accountable, you can hold other people accountable. And you can actually just make sure that your idea has more of a fighting chance as opposed to just being dependent on one person or one entity. And that goes for almost anything. If you have a country that's run by one person, it's very different to a country that's run by a group of people. Even if families, single parent families, we hear about all the struggles that they go through versus just families that have two key figures to support maybe 3 or 4 in terms of grandparents, it's a very different experience, and it changes the trajectory of success. So bringing that down to business, why would you want to set yourself up where the odds are against you? Most solo entrepreneurs fail. Not to say that teams can't fail, but teams are more likely to sort of cover each other. If one person can't make the pitching meeting, another person can do it. If one person doesn't have the time to pick up the sales call, the other person can do it. If one person can't code, the other person can do it. So that's always been my biggest challenge. Um, and it took me a long time to learn that lesson. And I probably had to learn that lesson the hard way by trying to do everything myself, because I'll just upskill myself, and I'll go on more courses and I'll learn everything. But you're still limited in terms of time and the impacts that you as one individual can make. So my mentality has really changed now. Before I even start to plan out the business in my own mind, I start to find a team of people who are just as passionate and have the similar work ethic to me, and I let us all plan it together. I don't really say, right, this is my idea. Who wants to come on board my idea? It's I have an idea, but you might have a better idea. You might have a better idea. And is there synergy that we can work on this idea together? Otherwise, I don't want to sort of run on something my own and then try to find people to jump on the ship with me.
Thank you very much for that, Junior. Just coming back to that point you've made about, starting off alone and managing your business alone, to avoid burnout. I know of many, aspiring entrepreneurs who have no choice but to start on their own and manage the business in a solo way, due to lack of resources or funds to be able to, afford a bigger team or, recruit people on board. So just to get your thoughts on that, how can they find the right balance of, doing few things alone, the things that they are really good at, as well as getting people on board with the, relevant skills that they don't have to be able to make the business work? What are your thoughts on that?
Mm. Yeah, so I mean, you touched on something there in terms of lack of resources, and that's how we sort of frame it, because our first solution is I can't pay people to do this stuff, but that's not the only solution. So sometimes it's not really a lack. I mean, all the time it's not actually a lack of resources. It's always a lack of resourcefulness. So why can you not, if you can sell your product and you can sell your vision, you should be able to sell somebody else who wants to jump on board that vision with you. So sometimes it's your presentation skills. How do you present this as a great, viable business opportunity that someone else can jump on board with? Sometimes are you willing to give away the relevant equity to get the talent on board? Or is it, now I want to keep it all to myself? It's a little sense of sort of selfishness or control freakness in there. I'm very much like that myself as well. I don't want to just give away equity, but I realize that I have to be prepared to. And if I'm not prepared to, then I'm signing up for future burnout. So it's not just the cost of, right, this person's time, it's also the cost of managing to offload certain things and just having someone to bounce off ideas and someone to keep me accountable. So I'm usually more open to giving away more equity and negotiating. So it is really about how do we be resourceful as opposed to looking at money as the only barrier to expanding your team. There's loads of people out there who are willing to come on board, support you because maybe they don't want to get paid. Maybe they want to get the experience. Maybe they want access to the network. Maybe they have their own projects that they're running, but there's a joint venture partnership that could work here. So that's still offloading some kind of work until you could probably find a more permanent person to take that role. There's usually always loads of people out there with similar needs and or gaps that can be filled by what you have to offer. And it is really just about being resourceful, finding creative ways to collaborate, creative ways to partner, just as some of the suggestions that I've already mentioned, and not really looking at finance as the biggest barrier to bringing the team on board.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. So let's have a look into the role universities play in helping the students. So we know that, the ability to think creatively or to embrace uncertainty or learn from failures is crucial to be able to cultivate that mindset of innovation and, be able to adapt to global challenges. Now, my question to you now is, how can universities foster an innovative and taking mindset in students to better prepare them for that entrepreneurial success?
I think that's great. That's an excellent question. Um, Overall, I think as a society, we need to look at, in terms of the risk-taking part, we need to look at how we measure the success of an entrepreneur. So as a society, we usually see, right, how much money has this business made, or how many people have they employed, or are they still running 1 year from now? And that's really focused on the business, the product. It's not focused on the entrepreneur. And if we're saying the purpose of the uni's engaging is to create better entrepreneurs that can go out in society and then create better products, we need to allow that room for failure. So rather than measuring the entrepreneur on is your business still running, or how much money has your business made, sometimes the success is you was working on a business and you realize that that business isn't going to work. That's success, because you've probably saved yourself a lot of money, a lot of time, and the ability to spot what ideas will work and what ideas don't work is what makes a great entrepreneur. So a lot of the times in my role as an enterprise advisor for the university, my part of my job is to shut down some business ideas in the most kindest way, but it's to realize, and I never ever tell anybody that your idea won't work, because who am I to clip someone's wings or talk about their potential? But what I would say from an experience angle, this is what you need to look out for. And probably 98% of the time, I'm right. But it's about getting them to see that I was right. And it's not telling them I was right. It was right. Guiding questions. So what would you do if a competitor stepped into the market? Is your unique selling point really that unique now? Suddenly they start to realize, oh, okay, I can see his line of thinking. I can see his questioning. Now I know how to create a unique selling point. Now I know how to create a viable business. Or, right, that sounds really good, but what happens once you start to bring on your first employee and you still keep those prices? Suddenly, you can't afford to. You can't afford 2 employees, 3 employees, 4 employees. So your business isn't going to be scalable. What are you going to do then? Suddenly, they start to realize that, oh, okay, so this is how I make a business scalable. So sometimes the most successful thing an entrepreneur can do is to pull the plug on the business before it gets too late. And we never ever sort of consider that a success. We never consider that as great, you've learned something new. It's just like in sports, in boxing. Yes, you can attack and you can jab, but you don't just measure the success of the boxer by how many times they've hit the other person in the face. It's also how many times can you dodge the punches that's coming your way. How skilled are you at navigating that and competing, because that's part of the skill of an entrepreneur. It's not just how well I attack the market, but how well I can navigate the choppy winds that's going to be coming in, and how do I sail this boat to a successful end? How do I become such a skilled sailor? So that's a part that we really, really miss as a society. And then it trickles down into universities, because we have metrics like, right, how many people have you employed in your business, and if you haven't made this much money, then it's a failure. So what we need to do is really create that experience for students to fail, and create an environment for them to fail and fail faster. This is a very popular concept in especially tech startups. Let's just quickly fail as fast as we can, because we know that in the failing, that's where we do the learning, and in the learning, that's where we become successful entrepreneurs. And investors love to give money not just to successful businesses, but successful entrepreneurs. So creating things where, so for example, at Greenwich University, we're working on some kind of agency model where the university can give contracts to students to then trial and experiments. Rather than giving contracts outside, they can, if it's a digital marketing thing, give it to some of the digital marketing students so they can run it as their business. At least they can start to learn on the job in guided mentorship. Or if there's a legal department, maybe some people want to become consultants. So working with outside businesses who need legal advice, they can engage with the students who are studying law, so they can start to set up their own practice. This is where you're creating a safe environment for the students to learn, but you also engage in other communities. Other things that we do as a university is things like accelerator programs. So students can come in with their idea and they can learn sales, marketing, pitching, and all the things that they're going to need in the big wide world. And it just creates this safe space for them to realize that this was my idea. How do I get my idea to something that's market ready? And even if it's not market ready, I've not wasted these 6 weeks of being on this accelerator program because I've learned how to get a business market ready by doing it in practice. So that's the opportunity, making it more of an experiential learning program. And even if it's like a marketing course, right, it's great that we have all the theory about how to learn marketing, but why not create a white labeled product, give it to all your students and tell them, right, go out there and create a digital marketing campaign, brand these products, and we're going to see who can sell the most, but not for the purpose of measuring or grading you based on profit. It's what did you learn from this? Did you learn that, right, these color codes might not match? Or did you learn that the name of the business is probably not clever and you should have come up with something that's more relevant to your market or something that didn't require much, education? Or did you find more cost-effective ways of marketing your product online as opposed to doing the old traditional route? So I think there's a massive need to make it less of a theory and more of a practice, but also change how we measure the success of entrepreneurs, and not measure it based on the success of the actual business.
Thank you very much for sharing those insights, Junior. So, just touching back on your point earlier, an entrepreneur knowing when to pull the plug on an idea. How do they, because there are some aspiring entrepreneurs who have great ideas, but, it gets to a point where they're stuck and, to them, it seems like a very, good idea, but to others, it just doesn't make sense. So how can they, or at what point will they know to pull the plug on an idea?
Mm. So the key thing I always look for, and I always encourage entrepreneurs to look for it, is the concept of product market fit. So if you have good product market fit, then whatever product or service that you have, you've got literally people who are begging for it. Now you've positioned it in a well in a way in a space, even if it's not fully built, but you've positioned it in a way where you know that there's the demand for this, and you know that your solution is the best solution for this. It doesn't have to mean you've got like millions of people using it, but even if you've got a core group of 10 to 12 people who, if you also remove the product or service from them, they'll be very upset, because it serves such a core need for them. Then you can find another 10 people and another 10 people, and you can start to create a sales process. But at least you know that this is something that the market actually wants. So the whole concept of product market fit is working towards this solution that people actually want, as opposed to creating a solution in your own mind and hoping that this is the solution everyone wants. So you discover it with your audience, you ask the right type of questions, and you keep pivoting until you know that, right, this is the perfect gift for them. This is it. And how long that could take? It could take 2 days, it could take 2 years, it could take 2 decades. And this is the journey, and this is the exciting bit. What I usually tell people is create some kind of runway. So, and based on the realistic expectations of other businesses in that industry, how long should it take to get off the ground? And what are your current resources in terms of team size? So with a bigger team, obviously you can get more done. With a smaller team, you might need a much longer runway. Sometimes a much longer runway also means you might need a bit more money. So look at how much money you have in the bank. So always looking at the cards that you have dealt. Some of the hardest things is to know when to pull the plug. And I've had this in my own business as well, where maybe there's a big opportunity. I've got like an investor meeting around the corner. However, I've been working on this business for 2, 3 years and it hasn't really taken off. Do I carry on going and keep building it in preparation for that investor meeting, or do I sort of pull the plug because I might be wasting time? And I always make decisions based on the cards that I currently have dealt. Sometimes it's easy to go back and think, oh, I've already invested so much time and I've already hired these people and I've already done all of this stuff. If you know it's not going to work, it doesn't matter about the sunk costs. Those costs are gone. So you can only play the cards that you currently have. So you wake up each day and say, right, with the cards that I currently have, I've got this is what I've learned about this business. This is what's currently happening in the market. Is it worthwhile if I was to wake up today and just like invest based on how much money I have in the bank today and what I've learned today? Would this be worthwhile to continue going for another year? If not, take your learning and apply that to the next business. And if it is worthwhile, then roll the dice again and keep going. But just know that you have to be prepared to take the cost as part of the entrepreneurship. You have to be prepared to, if this goes wrong, there's always an element of uncertainty that this could go wrong. And if you feel like, do you know what, the hands I got right now, it's worthwhile, then roll the dice. If not, then say I'm going to hold my hand for now. I'm not going to play, and that's fine. It's not a failure. That's part of the skill, knowing when and where to roll that dice. That's part of the skill of an entrepreneur, knowing that this is an idea that is viable or isn't an idea that's viable. Because at the end of the day, you are an investor in your business. You're investing your time, you're investing your money, you're investing your energy, you're investing your mental health in this business. And is it going to be a worthwhile return? If not, then there's no point.
So now we are looking at more of collaborations between universities and businesses, and this is to help create that job opportunity for students. But I feel that there is still more that universities can do. So my question to you now is, how can they better leverage the industry connections and alumni networks they have to provide more impactful mentorship and networking opportunities for student entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always so much more that can be done, especially engaging existing businesses. So one of the other things that we do, we run hackathons, which are probably like 2-day programs where businesses, outside businesses, will approach the uni and say, look, we have a problem. Maybe we have a product that's not selling. We want your students to come together over the weekend and present a solution for us. So we did one similar with Amazon recently at the university, and that works quite well. We probably had about 60 students who were selected out of well over 150 who applied. And those who were selected were put into random groups. So they worked with other students, and Amazon came and they basically pitched that this is the problem that we're having with one of our products, and we want you guys to go out there and solve it for us. And then they had a time trial, and they had literally about 48 hours to come up with a solution to pitch to Amazon. And then amongst them, there was probably about 10 teams, and 2 teams won different awards. So that was a great example of engaging businesses, because what happened is Amazon sent some of the employees to come down and mentor some of the students. It was a great connection there for employability. It was a great connection just for to learn the insights, and it was also a great connection for big companies to sort of see how, potential customers are seeing their problems and seeing potential solutions. So allowing students to solve the problem, able skilled students as well to solve some of the business problems that businesses are having, creates such a great partnership there. And we've done this now with multiple businesses, small businesses, big organizations. Every business has some challenges, and working with research teams at universities or even in colleges and saying, right, give this to your students to come up with a solution for us. Whether they take those solutions on board or not is one thing, but what's happening, they've outsourced the work for free, and the students are getting valuable experience to look into, under the bonnet of a business that they might potentially want us to work with. But most importantly, they're getting something that they can put on their CV, and they're getting the much needed experience of actually being an entrepreneur and solving entrepreneurial problems, working in teams, pitching in a real environment. So that's one of the key things we do. Also, we have partnerships with companies like Santander who provide funding for our entrepreneurs. So we have business plan competitions where students write their business plans, and the funding doesn't really come from the uni, it comes from the uni partners. So that's another great way, because every business needs money. And even just to test the idea, you need money. And, as a university, technically it's a charity. So having corporate partners who can sponsor things like that works really, really well. And we also have bigger sort of inter-uni competitions that can also be sponsored by local businesses or national businesses. So there's so much scope. You're completely right. There's so much scope, and I don't think a lot of institutions are utilizing their sort of partners and business networks enough.
Do you think there is more collaboration with the bigger companies as rather the small startups? Do you think there's a big difference between both in who they
No, I
partner
think
with?
it's good to have a mix. Sometimes you probably get a little bit more engagement with the bigger companies because they're bigger brands. But with the smaller companies, sometimes they have actually the best job opportunities. They have the best problems, and they're still businesses, and they probably take it on. They probably value it more with the smaller companies. So it's good to have that mix. because the some small companies are probably working on really big issues, and they might not be well known, but they're working on issues that some of the students will be super passionate about, as opposed to, I've just helped this multi-billion company come up with another great idea that they've probably got people already in the teams working on, versus this smaller company that's just down the road. The advice that my team have come up with is revolutionize them and turn them into a global brand now suddenly. So there's you always see a lot more impact with the smaller companies naturally. So it is a good mix, and I think you should always have that type of mix there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Let's have a look at internships itself. So, although internships at startups can provide students with the practical exposure they need in the entrepreneurial world, but there are some concerns about unpaid service or lack of structured training programs. Now, how can we strike that right balance between providing valuable learning opportunities and also ensuring that there is indeed fair compensation and treatment of interns, especially in a very constrained, resource constrained environment of early stage companies? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've seen it work both ways, where I've seen not just young people, but people who are hungry be exploited.
Mm.
And I've also seen it in the other ways where, you've gone out there and you've overcompensated someone, but it doesn't work because there's no real value. I do usually err on the side of, if you're going into an internship, you're not going there to earn, you're going there to learn. If you're going for a job, then you're going there to earn. So I'd always encourage loads of people, if you are new to the industry and you want to get ahead, money shouldn't be your priority. You should have something else that can cover your money, whether it's living with family or student grants. But if you're going to an internship, you know full well that if you do get paid here, this is a bonus, but you're here to learn. And then it's the job of the internship provider to actually make sure this is a learning experience, and you're not just sort of pushing them to the side to stack shelves, and they don't take anything away from it. So that transparency is, and the expectations that you are here to learn, and therefore I'm here to educate. I can't just toss you the work that I can't be bothered to do, or get you to do mundane work. I have to have a mentor in place. I have to have set hours that I dedicate to you for the mentorship. I have to give you opportunity to ask questions and not just silence you. I have to take a risk on you and give you the chance to speak to customers face to face, and I know that I have to know that you're going to mess things up as well. But I know that you are here to learn. So if it's an internship, it's generally I go under the idea that you're here to learn, not to earn. And then once you feel like you've learnt enough, then we have a, a good pathway where it could potentially lead to a job. So that kind of transparency, it just sets the expectation clear for everybody. And the reason I'm a big advocate for, don't necessarily need to pay people, is because I, very personal to me, but I started off, I told you one of my first businesses was as a football coach. I started off as a volunteer. So I worked at a club and I didn't get paid for the first two sessions. And then I got paid like £5 at the time, which was, as a 16-year-old, they're like, yeah, that's something. In fact, there was about seven of us that was invited down to come and trial to be a coach. I was the only one that woke up at 6:30 in the morning and showed up, so I was the only one that got the job. So, and that's what I love, because when you take away the money, you really start to see who is passionate. You really start to see who is dedicated. You really start to see who can actually go far. And those are the people that usually then, go on to do really, really good stuff. Obviously, at some point, I did have to get paid, and then I got paid, but I started to add more value. I understood the concept of, initially you're taking a risk on me until I can prove myself, then you can pay me more. And then I proved myself further. I took on more management responsibility and I got paid more, until the point where I could set up my own thing. So it's always the best route to go through, because if you are given money at the start, you might not have the responsibility, but you probably also haven't proven yourself that you're worth that. So there's no fair exchange there. But there has to be a clear pathway to get into the point where this is something that you can make money from. But at the start, you're learning. So I don't think people should be paid to learn. I think people should learn from their own free will. And then from the skills that they've learned, that's where they go out there into the marketplace and start, they can actually genuinely add value.
I totally agree with that. I think it's the best route. Learning, learning new skills even more like, and getting your foot into new opportunities. I think that's the best route. But then again, because even me myself, I remember in my early years of, my career, I had to do a lot of voluntary work to be able
Mm,
to, get my foot through in the marketing industry. And, for some others, it doesn't work that way.
yeah.
I had, my family who were able to support me, whether it's transportation or, other personal needs, but it's not really the same for other students who also come from a disadvantaged background,
Mm,
so it's also finding that balance. How can they, because we also have to look at it from their perspective. They don't have anyone, and, for most of them, they're probably the bread winner of the family. And so, working for free, I would say, might not be an option for them. So, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think there should still be a fair compensation for those that also come from a disadvantaged background?
the principles never change, irrespective of your background. So that will be a fact. The principles never change, irrespective of your background. But I do understand that obviously everyone's situation is different, but every market is also different as well. So if you're in a very, very competitive field, you need to stand out. You need to get your foot in the door. And this is where demand and supply plays a massive role. If there's one position, so let's, for example, the housing market. We know the housing market is absolutely ridiculous right now, but it's all about demand and supply. The government aren't building any extra houses. So you're blaming landlords for putting up the rent. Their interest rates are going up. If landlords decide, you know what, it's not profitable anymore, then everybody gets kicked out of the house. So the compromise is we've got to put the rent up. So, and it's not fair on everybody, but it's a demand and supply issue. So going back to job opportunities, if there's 20 skilled people who want the job, then as an employer, you have a bargaining power there. So the bargaining power for the employer says, I'm going to pay, you're all as skilled as each other. I'm going to pay the least because it makes more sense for me as a market space. Or you can be strategic and say, right, I'll come in and do 1 or 2 days for free so I can demonstrate my real worth. All right. Because I know nobody else is willing to do that. And then you come and do 1 or 2 days for free. And suddenly they say, like, this person's great. We don't actually want them to leave. In fact, this has actually helped us cut out all the cost of our recruitment. Let's give that extra money to this person. They're already in the job. They already know the client. They've already proven themselves. They've got their foot in the door. Do you know what? Let's just give them a pay rise. And then you start to build your value and you start to make yourself sort of indispensable there. So I always encourage people, if you are going to go work for free, do it as something that's just it's a strategic strategy. It's not just something that is, you know, they've told me that I have to work for free. Offer your services for free because you know that's going to get your foot in the door. If it doesn't give you any advantage, then don't do it. Nobody's holding a gun to your head, I guess. If experience is a pre-requirement and it's finding hard to get experience, what could you do to stand out? What could you do to actually push yourself? And sometimes going in and saying that I can demonstrate my services, same way companies give you a free trial or sign up for 1 month for free. They know that after that 1 month, you're going to be so hooked and they try to give you as much value within those 30 days so that you can make an undisputable decision that you're going to continue. And that's the same approach that I always tell people. I'm not saying work for free for life, but if you are going to go in there, you know that, right, I'm going even here to learn, but I also want to demonstrate as much value within the short time so that they know they have to pay me my worth. It's very hard for an employer to judge you on your worth just because you said that, this is what you need or this is how much you need to pay your bills. That doesn't reflect in terms of what they need you to do. So so every market is very, very different. Um, and I don't think it works for every market. It's not one size fits all, and that's why it's very hard to say that. And it really does depend on how competitive the opportunity is. And for a little point just to wrap up on, I remember there was a job ad for, I think, working as a waiter in Buckingham Palace. And it went viral because everybody's like, hang on, this is just the typical market rate for a waiter. And in fact, it's actually less than the typical market rate. Why would anybody want to work for less than the market rate? And especially, why would Buckingham Palace, who have billions of pounds, why would they, not pay a higher wage? We're expecting you to be paying like, you know, 10 times the market rate because you're Buckingham Palace. But again, imagine saying on your CV, I worked at Buckingham Palace. What does that do for you? And they know that. So that's why they can, yeah, to a degree exploit it. But again, it's market forces. Why would they pay 10 times the market rate when they know that there's people who are willing to work it just for the name? There's people who are willing to, if silly idea, but if Cambridge University says, hey, do you know what? If you paid us, we can just put our name on your CV. So you can say that you did a short course at Cambridge. What would that do for people's job prospects?
Mm.
People would pay. I mean, I don't actually have to do the full course, but I could do like a little short course and I can just pay them. Um, and then I could take their name and use their brand. So there's value that is always being gained there. It's not necessarily monetary value, but there's value in being with the brand association. And this is what we're not looking for. Of course, that doesn't pay your bills, but and everybody knows that that's going to enhance your job prospects in the future. So if that's the game, play that game for your benefit and be strategic with it. I might not get paid, it might not pay my bills, but I know that it's going to set me up in a more competitive position. So I will use you as much as you use me. And this is how we become useful. So if I feel like I'm exploited, what can I also take out from this? So always work to learn and take as much as you can, whether it's the networks, the mentorship, the connections, the relationships, and then leverage that. If you're not getting paid financially, find other ways to compensate yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. So it's all about the mindset and just thinking more about the value that you get from that, whatever role that is. So thank you very much for that insight. So what advice would you give to university students who are very passionate about entrepreneurship, but may be hesitant to take the leap due to fear of failure or, just feel lost in whatever direction they would like to take next?
Yeah.
What would you advise them to do?
Um, so entrepreneurship is a practical course. You can learn the theory, but nothing beats the actual practice. So you have to do it. And if you are fearful, the best way to overcome your fear is by actually doing the thing that you are afraid of, in a safe environment. So I used to have a fear of cats. The only way I overcame my fear of cats is by stroking a cat. Because the moment I stroked a cat, suddenly I had this core memory that dispelled all the fears and the myths that, cats are going to scratch you. Suddenly I stroked a cat and it's like, oh, I never got scratched. So maybe this story that I've been telling myself for years is a lie. And then that's where I started to grow my confidence. So confidence isn't something that you have or you don't have, it's something that you grow in. So if you are fearful, go out there and practice. Try to sell a product, even if it's not your own product. Try launch a product. Try launch an idea, even if you know that this idea is not going to work. The fact that you've just gone out there and you practice is that exercising. You're building the muscle. And then you take another leap and another leap and another leap. Eventually, your leaps are getting bigger and bigger, and you find that you're actually growing in confidence. You're learning more about yourself. You're learning more about the market. You're learning through all your small errors and all your mini experiments that what's going to work and what's not going to work, what you like, what you don't like, who you like working with, and what your skills are. So go out there and practice. That's the best thing. It's great that you are in university and even if you're not studying anything related to entrepreneurship, you could be studying photography. Try to set up a little photography business on the side, just so you can practice, or have some other idea that's you know in something that you're probably semi-passionate about at least, whether it's fashion or whatever it is, and just try things. Go out there and learn. Speak to mentors, speak to people who've been there and done that, but definitely nothing can replace actual practice. That will help you grow in confidence, but it will also help you um, realize what type of entrepreneur you want to be.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Practice makes perfect.
That's it.
Well, it's been a great pleasure to have you here with us, Junior, and thank you very much for sharing valuable insights on this topic. And for those that have watched, if you would like to connect with Junior on future projects, or you would just like to have further conversations with him, please feel free to get in touch with him on the details below. And on that note, I would like to thank you all for watching, and I hope this has been indeed an insightful discussion for you.
Thanks for having me. Take care.